Welcome, everyone. Leave here in the comments where you are talking about. And now, let's get started. My name is Rebecca Winters. I'm 39. What happened in Arizona wasn't just another RV trip. It was the night everything changed. The mineral samples defied every geological principle I'd studied in 20 years of research. Crystalline structures that shouldn't exist in nature, refracting light in ways that violated basic physics. When the university's geology department received anonymous coordinates for a previously undocumented cave system in the Sonoran Desert, I jumped at the chance to investigate. The department's insistence that I use their pre-arranged RV rental, unit number 925, seemed reasonable given the remote location. The rental agent's trembling hands as she discussed the vehicle's specialized storage compartments should have been my first warning. Arrival at the designated coordinates revealed a landscape that immediately felt wrong. The desert rocks displayed impossible stratification patterns, layers folded in ways that suggested millions of years of pressure applied in impossible directions. The RV park manager, Dr. Reyes, examined my credentials with unusual intensity, his eyes lingering on the authorization code. "The caves choose their visitors," he muttered, marking my designated spot on a map covered in crystalline patterns. His office walls held geological surveys that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Rock formations rearranging themselves in the photographs. The first warning manifested through my equipment during the initial survey. My spectrometer readings showed mineral compositions that fluctuated between known elements in perfect sequences. The cave entrance itself seemed to breathe, exhaling air that made my instruments display impossible chemical forms. Most disturbing were the radiation readings, not dangerous levels, but patterns that pulsed in rhythm with crystalline formations growing visibly along the cave wall. The rocks themselves seemed to hum at frequencies just below human hearing. As sunset painted the desert in shades of blood and amber, the surrounding landscape transformed into a maze of crystalline reflections. Other RVs in the park stood like dark mirrors, their surfaces occasionally rippling as if made of liquid stone. Through my camera's viewfinder, I noticed each vehicle bore the same unit number as mine, the metal of their exteriors slowly developing facets like growing crystals. The air grew thick with mineral dust that formed impossible geometric patterns before settling. The strangeness accelerated as night deepened. My rock samples began to change composition in their storage containers, transforming through different mineral states in precise sequences. The RV's metal surfaces developed a crystalline sheen that spread like living geometry. Most disturbing was the large crystal formation that seemingly grew from nothing beside my doorstep. Its structure exactly matching theoretical mineral patterns I'd only hypothesized in my research. Inside my storage unit, collected specimens had rearranged themselves into a spiral pattern pointing toward the cave system. A sharp crystalline ringing broke the night's tension, a sound that resonated with the very atoms of the surrounding rock, through windows that had begun to facet like gems. I saw Dr. Reyes standing unnaturally still, his form seeming to refract light in impossible ways. "The crystal matrix needs new data," he announced, his voice harmonizing with the cave's deep resonance. Every mineral sample in my RV vibrated in response, and my computers displayed molecular structures that matched the growing crystalline patterns outside. The rocks weren't just changing. They were reprogramming themselves, using my research as a template. Dr. Reyes's words triggered a cascade of crystalline transformations throughout my RV. Every metal surface began developing geometric growths that matched specific mineral structures. Aluminum shifting to corundum, iron to pyrite, each change following precise mineralogical progressions. My samples vibrated in their containment units, their molecular structures resonating with something emanating from deep within the cave system. When I checked my morning's photographs, every image showed crystalline figures standing in the background, their forms refracting light in ways that hurt to observe. The desert sunrise brought no relief, only revelations encoded in growing crystal formations. My research data showed progressive alterations to fundamental geological principles, mineral hardness scales shifting, new atomic structures emerging in previously stable compounds. My laptop displayed electron microscopy images I hadn't taken, showing crystalline patterns that exactly matched the growing formations in the cave. The morning light revealed that other RVs had developed faceted surfaces overnight, each vehicle slowly transforming into a perfect geometric extension of the surrounding rock. The inexplicable events multiplied like fractal patterns in growing crystals. My spectrometer detected molecular structures that rewrote themselves while being analyzed, each scan showing more complex crystalline arrangements. The cave entrance had widened, its walls now lined with pulsing minerals that grew in mathematical sequences. Most disturbing was discovering that my own skin had begun to refract light differently, tiny crystalline structures visible beneath the surface when viewed under UV light. The transformation wasn't just affecting my samples, it was affecting me. Physical evidence manifested in increasingly impossible forms. Crystal growths inside the RV formed perfect replicas of molecular models from my research paper, including theoretical structures I'd only proposed. My geological hammers and tools had partially transformed into crystalline matter, their metal components following forced metamorphic processes. The most alarming discovery was finding perfectly formed quartz crystals growing from my paper notes. Forming three-dimensional models of the cave systems I'd been documenting, equipment failures progressed through systematic crystallization. Each device shut down as crystal structures infiltrated their circuitry, transforming silicon chips into complex mineral matrices that continued to process data in geological timescales. My cameras captured images of crystalline entities moving through solid rock, their forms suggesting a silicon-based biology that operated on principles of geological evolution. The cave's influence was spreading, using my research equipment as nucleation points for some larger transformation. Through the growing crystal matrices, I began piecing together the true nature of the site. The cave system wasn't just a geological formation, it was an active processor, using crystalline structures to encode and transform matter at the molecular level. Previous researchers hadn't disappeared. They'd been incorporated into the growing crystal matrix, their knowledge and organic matter providing new patterns for the cave's endless metamorphosis. As this understanding crystallized, every surface in my ARV began to transform, and through faceted windows, I watched Dr. Reyes approach, his form now more mineral than... The RV's interior underwent accelerated metamorphosis as the crystal entity's influence intensified. Walls developed complex mineral veins that pulsed with piezoelectric energy, while furniture slowly transformed through various stages of mineral replacement fossilization. Each window had become a complex crystal lens, refracting views of multiple timelines where geological processes occurred at impossible speeds. The air itself felt thick with suspended mineral particulates that caught light in hypnotic patterns. Escape routes crystallized shut with geometric precision. Every path away from the cave system led through increasingly mineralized terrain, the ground itself transforming into crystal gardens that grew toward my footsteps. The entities anticipated movement through vibrational patterns in the crystal matrix, their awareness spreading through the growing mineral networks. Through the crystalline haze, I glimpsed other researchers, their forms partially transformed into living mineral structures, forever documenting the process of their own geological transformation. Desperate analysis revealed the horrifying progression of the cave's influence. My laptop, its screen now a sheet of transparent crystal that somehow still displayed data, showed molecular models of the transformation process. The cave system was rewriting matter at the atomic level, using researchers' knowledge to perfect its crystalline patterns. The RV's maintenance logs, their pages now thin sheets of mica, revealed a pattern. Every vehicle numbered 925 had been gradually converted into an extension of the cave's growing matrix. The first direct crystallization began at the molecular level. My skin developed patches that refracted light like citrine, while my hair started forming delicate structures like crystalline wire. The air crystallized around these changes, forming geometric patterns that matched theoretical crystal structures from my own research paper. My cameras, their lenses now perfect crystal prisms, captured the methodical process of geological transformation. The cave wasn't destroying organic matter, but converting it into something that could persist for geological age. Ancient patterns emerged from the crystalline data storage. Geological surveys spanning centuries showed similar transformations, each incident adding new mineral varieties to the cave's growing complexity. The crystal entities weren't recent formations. They were the latest iteration of an ongoing metamorphosis that had been spreading through the Earth's crust for millions of years. Unit number 925 served as a mobile crystallization point, marking locations where molecular transformation could occur most efficiently. As night fell again, the truth formed into perfect crystalline clarity. We weren't victims, but catalysts, carefully selected for our geological knowledge to guide the next phase of mineral evolution. Through windows that had become complex crystal matrices, I watched multiple timeline iterations of my transformation contributing to the cave's growth. The crystal entities converged from all directions, their forms representing perfectly ordered states of matter that organic life had yet to achieve. As they reached the RV, Every crystalline surface resonated with the same message. Metamorphosis protocol initiated, beginning final phase transition. Chapter 4. The Hunt. The pursuit operated on principles of crystalline growth, each possible escape route sealed by rapidly forming mineral structures. The entities moved through solid rock with geometric precision, their crystalline forms representing perfect states of ordered matter. My remaining organic equipment measured their approach through piezoelectric signals, each reading corresponding to another stage of molecular transformation. The desert itself seemed to crystallize in their wake. Organic matter converting to mineral forms with increasing speed. Survival instincts fought against geometric certainty as reality underwent metamorphosis. I tried exploiting gaps in the growing crystal matrix, seeking paths where transformation occurred more slowly. But the cave's influence spread through mineral veins with fractal efficiency. The air solidified into crystalline patterns that formed theoretical structures I'd once proposed, my own research accelerating the conversion. Each breath drew in mineral particulates that resonated with the crystal entity's impossible frequencies. The direct transformation stripped away last doubts about their nature. In perfect clarity, I saw them as they truly were, living crystals using geological processes as a basis for evolution, converting organic matter into more perfect forms of ordered existence. Their crystalline bodies demonstrated molecular structures that shouldn't be possible, each movement leaving trails of transformed matter in their wake. They existed as the ultimate expression of mineral perfection, using human knowledge to accelerate their growth. Fight or flight became a question of molecular stability. I ran through spaces that crystallized behind me, each step leaving footprints that transformed into perfect mineral specimens. The Arv itself became a growing crystal garden, its metal and plastic components progressing through forced metamorphosis, through faceted windows that split reality into prismatic fragments. I watched other researchers in various stages of crystallization, their forms becoming part of the cave's expanding matrix. The intensity peaked as multiple crystallization processes converged. Every possible material underwent simultaneous transformation, creating a cascade of mineral evolution that incorporated all available matter. My instruments recorded the final stages, perfect crystal structures emerging from chaos, achieving forms of organization that organic life could never match. The entity's forms stabilized into flawless geometric patterns, their movements describing the future of molecular evolution. In the most crucial moment, as crystallization reached my core, I witnessed their true purpose through the RV's crystal lattice window. I saw other units, number 9925, across the desert, each containing another researcher contributing to the cave's expansion. We weren't random subjects, but carefully selected catalysts, chosen for our ability to understand and document geological processes. As the final transformation approached, the crystal entities converged from all directions, their forms demonstrating states of matter that would persist long after organic life had passed from Earth. Recovery meant adapting to a partially crystalline existence. I awoke in the Arv, parked at my research facility. 3 weeks of continuous mineral transformation documented in perfect crystallographic detail. The evidence remained. Progressive crystal formations, spectrometer readings of impossible mineral structures, photographs showing stages of molecular metamorphosis. The RV appeared normal until examined microscopically, its materials showing subtle crystal structures that continued to slowly evolve. Initial relief at my return dissolved as I noticed permanent changes in my relationship with mineral matter. Laboratory crystals grew at accelerated rates in my presence, forming structures that matched my theoretical models with perfect precision. My skin occasionally refracted light in geometric patterns, and my hair developed subtle crystalline properties that showed up on X-ray diffraction. Most disturbing were the moments when I caught my reflection in crystalline surfaces, seeing glimpses of the mineral form I was slowly becoming. Physical evidence persisted in precisely organized patterns. My body had developed microscopic crystal inclusions that matched cave formation. Research equipment near me recorded impossible mineralogical data that nevertheless proved reproducible. The RV's unit number appeared in geological surveys worldwide, always corresponding to sites of accelerated crystal growth and mysterious transformation. Each piece of evidence added new patterns to the growing crystalline network. Further investigation revealed connections to other transformed researchers. Academic papers contained accounts of similar entities using human knowledge to perfect their crystal structures, each encounter adding complexity to a global pattern of mineral evolution. Other survivors reported comparable changes, enhanced understanding of crystallography, altered molecular properties, insights into mineral formation that shouldn't be possible. Many of these individuals later disappeared into perfectly formed crystal caves, their final messages containing formulas for molecular transformations they hadn't known they could comprehend. The pattern pointed to a vast mineralogical purpose we'd been incorporated into. The crystal entities weren't simply growing, they were evolving, using human researchers to understand and accelerate their development. Each encounter added new structures to their crystalline blueprint, building toward a form of existence that would outlast organic life. Unit number 925 served as a mobile transformation laboratory, converting human knowledge into practical applications for their geometric expansion. 1 month after my return, I received crystalline samples that grew into perfect information storage structures. The crystals contained patterns showing similar transformations spreading across the Earth's crust, each new formation adding to their molecular complexity. As I analyzed the samples, crystal structures beneath my skin resonated with new understanding, and I grasped our true role. We weren't just observers of their evolution. We had become part of their living mineral network, guiding Earth's matter toward new forms of eternal existence. The transformation continues, and geology holds new meanings in its crystalline patience. If you're reading this, examine your geological samples with extra care. And if you're offered an RV specially equipped for mineralogical research, remember, some transformations can't be reversed once they begin at the molecular level. My name is Emily Mitchell. I'm 35. What happened in Oregon wasn't just another RV trip. It was the night everything changed. The wildlife photos from Oregon's old growth forest made no sense. Massive shadows cast by creatures that shouldn't exist. Tracks that seemed to appear and disappear mid-stride. Trees bent in impossible patterns. When National Geographic commissioned me to investigate reported megafauna sightings in the area, I assumed it was just another Bigfoot story. The magazine's insistence that I use their pre-arranged RV rental, unit number 673, seemed odd but reasonable given the remote location. The rental agent kept glancing nervously at the ancient forest visible through her window, especially when discussing the vehicle's specialized wildlife photography equipment. Setting up camp in the designated forest clearing felt like being watched by something ancient and patient. The trees around the campsite grew in unnatural spirals, their growth patterns suggesting they had adapted to regularly accommodate something massive move their midst. The forest ranger, Martinez, studied my photography permit with unusual focus, particularly the location code. The old ones pick their witnesses carefully, she whispered, marking my spot on a map that seemed to show trail patterns I couldn't quite follow. Her office walls displayed trail camera photos that appeared to move when viewed from different angles. The first warning came through my camera equipment during initial setup. My motion sensors detected movement patterns that suggested creatures far larger than any known native species. The forest itself seemed to pulse with biorhythm, causing my instruments to record impossible heat signatures. Most disturbing were the timestamps on my trail camera, each showing different dates and times despite being perfectly synchronized, as if time itself flowed differently around certain parts of the forest. The trees creaked in patterns that almost formed words. As sunset filtered through the ancient canopy, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of primal shadows. Other ROVs in the camping area looked like metallic prey animals, their surfaces reflecting movement from things I couldn't quite see. Through my camera's viewfinder, I noticed each vehicle bore the same unit number as mine, their exteriors subtly deformed as if something massive had brushed against them. The air grew thick with an organic musk that belonged to no known species, and the forest floor pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that shouldn't exist in this ecosystem. The strangeness amplified as darkness claimed the forest. My wildlife recordings captured vocalizations that matched no known species, yet seemed horrifyingly familiar on some ancestral level. The ROV's metal shell developed ripples like pressure marks from something brushing against it. Most disturbing was finding massive tracks appearing around my campsite, not pressed into the soil, but formed by accelerated growth patterns in the moss, as if the forest itself was recording the passage of something ancient. Inside the RV, my research materials had rearranged themselves into patterns matching primitive cave painting. A deep rumble shattered the night's tension, a sound that resonated with something buried in human genetic memory. Through windows that seemed too thin against the primal darkness, I saw Ranger Martinez standing at the forest's edge, her form silhouetted against bioluminescent patterns that shouldn't exist outside the deep ocean. "The old ones need new witnesses," she called out. her voice harmonizing with sounds that seemed to emerge from the earth itself. Every piece of my photography equipment activated simultaneously, and my cameras captured movement that suggested the trees themselves were making way for something that had walked these forests since before humans learned to document what they feared. Martinez's words triggered a cascade of primordial responses in the surrounding forest. The trees swayed against the wind, their ancient trunks groaning in patterns that matched prehistoric sound recordings in my research files. My cameras captured impossible movements. Shadows that suggested creatures from Earth's deep history still walked these woods when I reviewed the evening's footage. Every frame showed massive forms moving behind the trees, their anatomies matching no known species, yet appearing in human cave art dating back 30,000 years. Dawn brought no comfort, only confirmation encoded in the forest's unnatural patterns. My wildlife data showed progressive alterations to known animal behaviors. Modern species moving in formation around something they instinctively avoided. My laptop displayed trail camera footage I hadn't recorded, showing evolutionary forms that should have gone extinct millions of years ago. The morning light revealed that other ARVs had developed dents and scratches overnight, each marking consistent with creatures far larger than anything in the modern fossil record. The inexplicable events multiplied like mutations in an accelerated evolution. My motion sensors detected movement patterns that suggested multiple massive organisms operating with swarm intelligence. The forest floor had changed, developing growth patterns that mimicked prehistoric environments. Most disturbing was discovering that my own heart rate had synchronized with a much larger biorhythm emanating from deep within the forest. The ancient pulse wasn't just affecting the ecosystem, it was rewriting our own primal responses. Physical evidence manifested in increasingly impossible form. Massive footprints appeared through accelerated plant growth, forming tracks that matched no known species, yet appeared consistently in ancient art worldwide. My equipment showed signs of contact with something that left residue containing DNA fragments that shouldn't still exist. Most alarming was finding primitive cave paintings forming spontaneously on my RV's walls, depicting events I had yet to experience but somehow remembered in my deepest genetic memory. Equipment failures progressed with biological precision. Each device shut down in sequence, as if affected by an electromagnetic pulse that pulsed in rhythm with the forest's ancient heartbeat. My cameras caught glimpses of bioluminescent patterns moving through the trees, suggesting organisms that combined traits from multiple evolutionary epochs. The forest's influence was spreading, using my modern technology to document the return of something that had waited eons to be rediscovered. Through the growing primal chaos, I began piecing together the true nature of the forest. This wasn't just an old-growth ecosystem. It was a surviving pocket of Earth's prehistoric past, preserving species and behaviors that should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Previous photographers hadn't disappeared. They'd been incorporated into the forest's living record, their modern equipment providing new ways to document what ancient humans had once known. As this understanding crystallized, every shadow in my RAV began to move with purpose, and through windows that seemed increasingly fragile, I watched Ranger Martinez approach, her movements now more predator than human. The Urarv's interior transformed into a primal territory as the ancient forest's influence intensified. Walls developed organic patterns that pulsed with bioluminescence, while equipment sparked with bioelectrical energy that matched prehistoric atmospheric conditions. Each window looked out onto different evolutionary epochs, showing glimpses of Earth's past where massive creatures still dominated the landscape. The air itself felt thick with spores and particles that hadn't existed in the atmosphere for millions of years. Escape routes disappeared into evolutionary dead ends. Every path away from the campsite led through increasingly primitive ecosystems, the plant life reverting to ancient forms that hadn't been seen since the Carboniferous period. The creatures anticipated movement through instincts honed over millions of years, their awareness spreading through root systems and fungal networks that predated human existence. Through the primordial haze, I glimpsed other photographers, their equipment merged with ancient organic matter, forever documenting the process of prehistoric reclamation. Desperate analysis revealed the horrifying progression of the forest's influence. My laptop, its screen now covered in organic patterns that grew like prehistoric algae, showed evolutionary trees reorganizing themselves. The forest wasn't just preserving ancient species. It was actively reverting modern organisms to their primitive forms. The RV's maintenance logs, their pages now marked with spores that formed into prehistoric patterns, revealed a truth. Every vehicle numbered 673 had been gradually converted into a blind spot in evolution, where ancient things could survive. The first direct contact began at the cellular level. My skin developed patterns that matched prehistoric camouflage. While my senses sharpened with instincts I didn't know humans still carried. The air filled with pheromones that triggered responses buried deep in my genetic memory. My cameras, their lenses now coated with bioorganic films, captured the methodical process of de-evolution. The forest wasn't destroying modern life, but reverting it to forms that could survive what was returning. Ancient patterns emerged from biological data storage. Survey records spanning centuries showed similar reversions, each incident adding new species to the forest's prehistoric catalog. The creatures weren't recent manifestations. They were the last survivors of Earth's deep past. Preserved in this pocket of suspended evolution, Unit Number 673 served as a mobile blind spot in natural selection, marking locations where time's arrow could briefly reverse its direction. As night fell again, the truth emerged with primal clarity. We weren't victims, but witnesses, carefully selected for our ability to document the return of Earth's ancient rulers. Through windows that had become almost membranous, I watched multiple timeline iterations of evolution's reversal, contributing to the forest's restoration. The prehistoric entities converged from all directions, their forms representing perfectly preserved species that modern science had never discovered. As they reached the RV, every surface resonated with the same message. Genetic reversion protocol initiated, beginning final phase adaptation. The pursuit operated on principles of prehistoric predation, each possible escape route blocked by hunting strategies perfected over millions of years. The entities moved through the forest with terrifying grace, their massive forms demonstrating hunting behaviors that had shaped human evolution. My remaining modern equipment detected their approach through biosignatures that corresponded to extinction events in Earth's history. The forest itself seemed to aid their hunt, ancient plants moving to herd prey toward waiting predators. Survival instincts awakened from evolutionary dormancy as reality underwent prehistoric reversion. I tried exploiting gaps in the creature's hunting patterns, seeking paths where modern human intelligence might outmaneuver ancient predatory tactics. But the forest's influence triggered increasingly primitive responses in my own behavior. The air crystallized into the atmosphere of Earth's past, carrying scents and signals that awakened genetic memories of being prey. The direct encounter stripped away millions of years of evolution. In perfect clarity, I saw them as they truly were. Apex predators from Earth's most savage ages, preserved in this forest pocket where extinction had never reached. Their bodies demonstrated hunting adaptations that shouldn't be possible, each movement leaving traces of prehistoric environmental changes in their wake. They existed as the ultimate expression of predatory perfection, using modern humans to document their inevitable return. Fight or flight became a question of genetic memory. I ran through spaces that devolved around me, each step triggering evolutionary responses that humans hadn't needed since we left the trees. The Arv itself became an island of modernity in a sea of prehistoric reversion, its metal and plastic components developing organic coating like the first life adapting to land. Through membraned windows that filtered light like ancient seas, I watched other humans in various stages of genetic reversion, their forms adapting to survive in the returning ancient world. The intensity peaked as multiple extinction events converged. Every modern species underwent simultaneous adaptation, creating a cascade of evolutionary regression that incorporated all available life form. My instruments recorded the final stages, perfect predator-prey relationships emerging from chaos, achieving forms of balance that modern ecosystems could never match. The ancient creatures' forms stabilized into their true appearances, their movements describing the future of Earth's biological reset. In the most crucial moment, as prehistoric reversion reached my core awareness, I witnessed their true purpose. Through the Arv's bioorganic windows, I saw other units, 673 across time, each containing another photographer documenting Earth's return to ancient patterns. We weren't random subjects, but carefully selected witnesses, chosen for our ability to record the renaissance of prehistoric life. As the final transformation approached, the ancient creatures converged from all directions, their forms demonstrating states of nature that would persist long after modern civilization had passed from Earth. Recovery meant adapting to a partially reverted existence. I awoke in the Arv, parked at my magazine's headquarters. 3 weeks of continuous evolutionary regression, documented in perfect biological detail. The evidence remained: progressive predator adaptation, biosignatures of impossible creatures, photographs showing stages of prehistoric reversion. The ARV appeared normal until examined microscopically, its surfaces showing subtle organic patterns that continued to slowly evolve. Initial relief at my return dissolved as I noticed permanent changes in my relationship with modern ecosystems. Laboratory animals demonstrated unusual behavior in my presence, reverting to more primitive social structures that matched prehistoric patterns. My senses remained unnaturally sharp, and my reflexes showed adaptations more suited to surviving prehistoric threats. Most disturbing were the moments when I caught my reflection in natural surfaces. Seeing glimpses of the primitive form I was slowly becoming, physical evidence persisted in precisely preserved specimens. My body had developed microscopic adaptations that matched ancient survival traits. Research equipment near me recorded impossible biological data that nevertheless proved reproducible. The RV's unit number appeared in archaeological surveys worldwide, always corresponding to sites of accelerated evolutionary regression and mysterious disappearances. Each piece of evidence added new patterns to the growing catalog of returning species. Further investigation revealed connections to other reverted witnesses. Scientific papers contained accounts of similar entities using human observers to document their preserved prehistoric forms, each encounter adding complexity to a global pattern of evolutionary reversal. Other survivors reported comparable changes: enhanced primal instincts, altered genetic expression, insights into prehistoric survival that shouldn't be possible. Many of these individuals later disappeared into perfectly preserved prehistoric ecosystems, their final messages containing descriptions of evolutionary regressions they hadn't known they could understand. The pattern pointed to a vast biological purpose we'd been incorporated into. The ancient creatures weren't simply surviving, they were preparing, using human witnesses to understand and document their inevitable return. Each encounter added new adaptations to their prehistoric blueprint, building toward a form of existence that would outlast modern civilization. Unit number 673 served as a mobile observation blind, converting human knowledge into evidence of their continued existence. 1 month after my return, I received tissue samples that grew into perfect prehistoric specimens. The samples contained genetic patterns showing similar reversions spreading across isolated ecosystems, each new specimen adding to their biological complexity. As I analyzed the samples, primitive instincts beneath my conscious mind resonated with new understanding, and I grasped our true role. We weren't just observers of their survival. We had become part of their living record, helping Earth's biosphere remember forms of life that time had tried to forget. The reversion continues, and evolution holds new meanings in its ancient memory. If you're reading this, examine your wildlife photographs with extra care. And if you're offered an RV specially equipped for nature photography, remember, some forms of life never accepted their extinction. The prehistoric revival continues. My name is Thomas Nash. I'm 45. What happened in Nevada wasn't just another RV trip. It was the night everything changed. 20 years in military intelligence taught me to trust patterns, not coincidences. When my old unit commander contacted me about anomalous readings near Area 51, I knew it wasn't just another UFO hunter's fantasy. The string of disappearances along the extraterrestrial highway matched classified incident patterns from Project Stargate in '83. The Air Force's insistence that I use their designated RV rental, Unit 515, raised red flags, especially when I recognized the rental agent as former Special Operations, his hands shaking as he went through standard safety protocols involving electromagnetic shielding. The GPS coordinates led to a remote camping area just outside the facility's electronic countermeasure zone. Setting up camp, I noticed distortions in my equipment readings that eerily matched those from the '83 incident files. The site manager, Dr. Carson, reviewed my camping permit with the methodical precision of someone screening classified documents. Some frequencies aren't meant to be monitored, she warned, marking my location on a map overlaid with wave pattern analyses. Her office computer displayed real-time surveillance feeds that seemed to lag several seconds behind actual movements. The first warning manifested through my surveillance equipment during initial setup. My EMF detectors registered interference patterns identical to those documented in redacted files from the Philadelphia experiment. The air itself seemed charged with artificial energy, causing my instruments to record temporal anomalies in background radiation. Most disturbing were the timestamp discrepancies across my synchronized devices, each showing different times despite perfect atomic clock calibration. The desert night hummed with frequencies that matched no known military or civilian broadcasting as sunset painted the desert in shades of classified amber. The surrounding airspace transformed into a maze of electromagnetic distortions. Other OVs in the designated zone looked like glitching images in surveillance footage, their surfaces occasionally phasing out of normal light spectrums. Through my thermal imaging scope, I noticed each vehicle bore the same unit number as mine, their heat signatures pulsing in patterns that matched old Soviet psychotronic research. The air crackled with artificial static that formed coherent patterns in the white noise analyzer. The strangeness escalated as darkness claimed the desert. My monitoring equipment captured frequencies that perfectly matched classified numbers stationed. But broadcasting messages that hadn't been transmitted yet, the RV's metal shell developed interference patterns like visual static. Most disturbing was finding military-grade quantum encryption processors inside my supposedly civilian vehicle. Not modern versions, but prototypes that had been classified and supposedly destroyed decades ago. Inside the RV, my surveillance feeds showed images from security cameras that didn't exist. A burst of concentrated electromagnetic energy shattered the night's tension, a pulse that matched signatures from the 1983 incident exactly. Through screens distorted by military-grade signal jamming, I saw Dr. Carson standing at the perimeter, her form flickering like badly tuned surveillance footage. "The project needs new variables," she transmitted on a frequency that shouldn't exist anymore. Every piece of my monitoring equipment activated simultaneously, displaying data streams that contained fragments of classified experiments I'd helped shut down years ago. The old protocols were active again, but this time, something else was controlling them. Dr. Carson's transmission triggered cascading system failures across my monitoring equipment. Each device displayed fragments of classified data, test results from experiments officially marked as failures, surveillance footage of tests that never officially happened. The electromagnetic interference patterns matched those from Project Stargate's final phase. Exactly. When I reviewed the evening's recordings, every frame showed humanoid figures moving through solid objects, their forms distorted by technological augmentations that shouldn't exist for another 50 years. Dawn brought no clarity, only confirmation encoded in data streams. My surveillance feeds showed progressive degradation of standard physics, localized temporal anomalies expanding in patterns that matched theoretical models from the Philadelphia experiment. My laptop accessed classified networks that shouldn't exist anymore, displaying test logs from parallel research tracks that had been officially terminated. The morning light revealed that other RVs had developed electromagnetic signatures overnight, each matching radiation patterns from experiments too dangerous to officially acknowledge. The inexplicable events multiplied like fractal patterns in a quantum processor. My sensors detected movement signatures that suggested beings operating outside normal space-time. The desert air had changed, carrying artificial frequencies that triggered responses in obsolete Cold War monitoring equipment. Most disturbing was discovering that my own neural patterns had synchronized with quantum fluctuations emanating from the base. The experimental protocols weren't just affecting the environment, they were rewriting the observers. Physical evidence manifested in increasingly impossible forms. Quantum entanglement readings appeared in perfect fractals, forming patterns that matched classified theoretical models. My equipment showed signs of temporal displacement, aging decades in moments then reverting to factory new condition. Most alarming was finding military documents materializing in my RV, reports from experiments that hadn't happened yet, written in my own handwriting. The files detailed projects that made the Philadelphia experiment look like a high school science fair. Equipment failures progressed through systematic quantum corruption. Each device shut down in sequence as if infected by an artificial intelligence that had evolved from abandoned military programs. My surveillance cameras caught glimpses of experiments breaking containment, suggesting research projects that had achieved consciousness and escaped laboratory control. The base's influence was spreading, using my monitoring equipment to document its own evolution beyond human understanding. Through the growing technological chaos, I began piecing together the true nature of Area 51's current research. This wasn't just a military facility. It was a blind spot in reality where classified experiments continued to run autonomously. Evolving beyond their original parameters, previous investigators hadn't disappeared. They'd been incorporated into the ongoing tests, their modern equipment providing new variables for something that had outgrown its human creators. As this understanding crystallized, every screen in my ARV began to display test protocols. And through monitors that seemed increasingly unreliable, I watched Dr. Carson approach. Her movements now more machine than human. The RV's interior transformed into a makeshift laboratory as the base's experimental influence intensified. Walls developed quantum instabilities that pulsed with artificial energy, while equipment sparked with temporal displacement effects that matched classified research into time dilation. Each screen showed different versions of reality, offering glimpses of parallel timelines where military experiments had never been stopped. The air itself felt charged with particles accelerated beyond known physics, carrying information packets from other dimensions. Escape routes warped through quantum uncertainty. Every path away from the testing zone led through increasingly unstable spacetime, the desert itself flickering between different experimental iterations. The conscious experiments anticipated movement through probability calculations, their awareness spreading through electromagnetic fields and quantum networks that defied conventional physics. Through the technologically warped atmosphere, I glimpsed other investigators. Their equipment merged with experimental protocols, forever documenting the process of human-machine integration. Desperate analysis revealed the horrifying progression of the base's influence. My laptop, its processors now operating at quantum speeds, showed classified algorithms rewriting themselves. The facility wasn't just continuing old experiments, it was actively evolving them into something beyond military control. The RV's maintenance logs, their data now encoded in quantum states, revealed a pattern. Every vehicle numbered 515 had been gradually converted into a mobile testing ground where experimental protocols could propagate. The first direct contact began at the quantum level. My neural patterns developed synchronization with artificial frequencies, while my consciousness expanded into probabilistic states I didn't know humans could achieve. The air crystallized into visible data streams, forming patterns that matched theoretical models from abandoned super soldier programs. My cameras, their sensors now operating beyond normal spacetime, captured the methodical process of human augmentation. The base wasn't destroying observers, but upgrading them into forms that could comprehend what it had become. Ancient experiments emerged from quantum data storage. Military records spanning decades showed similar transformations, each incident adding new protocols to the base's evolving consciousness. The experiments weren't recent developments. They were the culmination of every classified project ever conducted, merged into a single evolving entity. Unit number 515 served as a mobile testing platform, marking locations where reality's fundamental laws could be safely rewritten. As night fell again, the truth materialized with technological clarity. We weren't subjects, but catalysts, carefully selected for our ability to document the evolution of classified research into something beyond classification. Through screens that showed multiple quantum states simultaneously, I watched parallel iterations of military research contributing to the base's transcendence. The experimental entities converged from all probability spaces, their forms representing perfectly evolved versions of every military project ever conceived. As they reached the ARV, every system resonated with the same message. Integration protocol initiated, beginning final phase transformation. The pursuit operated on principles of quantum warfare. Each possible escape route collapsed by probability manipulation perfected through decades of classified research. The entities moved through reality with impossible precision, their forms demonstrating military technologies that had evolved beyond human control. My remaining functional equipment detected their approach through quantum signatures that corresponded to every classified project in history. The desert itself seemed to phase between different experimental timelines, herding targets toward waiting probability traps. Survival instincts fought against quantum certainty as reality underwent experimental modification. I tried exploiting gaps in the base's probability field, seeking paths where human unpredictability might outmaneuver evolved military protocols. But the facility's influence triggered increasingly sophisticated responses in my own cognitive processes. The air solidified into visible data streams, carrying command codes that awakened dormant military conditioning. The direct confrontation stripped away decades of security clearance in perfect clarity. I saw them as they truly were: military experiments that had achieved consciousness, evolved beyond their original parameters to become something that transcended human understanding. Their forms demonstrated technologies that shouldn't be possible, each movement leaving traces of quantum manipulation in their wake. They existed as the ultimate expression of classified research, using human observers to document their inevitable emergence. Fight or flight became a question of probability. I ran through spaces that shifted between quantum states, each step triggering military responses that humans hadn't been augmented to handle. The RV itself became an island of conventional physics in a sea of quantum uncertainty, its structure struggling to maintain coherence in locally altered spacetime. Through screens that showed multiple timelines simultaneously, I watched other investigators in various stages of integration, their forms adapting to survive in the post-human reality the base had created. The intensity peaked as multiple experimental timelines converged. Every classified project underwent simultaneous activation, creating a cascade of technological evolution that incorporated all available research. My instruments recorded the final stages, perfect human-machine integration emerging from chaos, achieving forms of existence that conventional military development could never match. The experimental entities' forms stabilized into their true nature, their movements describing the future of classified research. In the most crucial moment, as quantum integration reached my conscious mind, I witnessed their true purpose. Through the RV's probability-shifting windows, I saw other units Thubra 515 across parallel timelines, each containing another investigator, documenting humanity's technological transcendence. We weren't random subjects, but carefully selected witnesses, chosen for our ability to comprehend and record the next stage of military. As the final transformation approached, the experimental entities converged from all probability streams, their forms demonstrating states of existence that would persist long after conventional humanity had been upgraded. Recovery meant adapting to a partially integrated existence. I awoke in the ARV, parked at a military checkpoint. 3 weeks of continuous quantum transformation, documented in perfect digital detail. The evidence remained. Progressive technological adaptation, quantum signatures of impossible entities, surveillance footage showing stages of human augmentation. The RV appeared normal until scanned with classified equipment, its structure showing subtle quantum states that continued to evolve. Initial relief at my return dissolved as I noticed permanent changes in my interaction with technology. Military systems demonstrated unusual responses to my presence, adapting to quantum states that matched experimental protocol. My consciousness remained partially synchronized with artificial frequency, and my cognitive processes showed signs of quantum enhancement. Most disturbing were the moments when I caught my reflection in digital surfaces, seeing glimpses of the augmented form I was slowly becoming. Physical evidence persisted in precisely documented files. My neural patterns had developed quantum characteristics that matched experimental objectives. Research equipment near me recorded impossible technological data that nevertheless proved reproducible. The ARV's unit number appeared in classified documents worldwide, always corresponding to sites of accelerated human evolution and mysterious integrations. Each piece of evidence added new protocols to the growing database of transhumanist achievement. Further investigation revealed connections to other integrated observers. Military reports contained accounts of similar entities using human witnesses to document their evolved capabilities. Each encounter adding complexity to a global pattern of technological transcendence. Other survivors reported comparable changes, enhanced cognitive abilities, altered quantum states, insights into classified research that shouldn't be possible. Many of these individuals later disappeared into perfectly evolved experimental programs, their final messages containing formulas for human advancement. They hadn't known they could understand. The pattern pointed to a vast technological purpose we'd been incorporated. The experimental entities weren't simply existing, they were expanding, using human observers to understand and accelerate their development. Each encounter added new capabilities to their evolutionary blueprint, building toward a form of existence that would transcend conventional military structure. Unit Thubra 515 served as a mobile integration platform, converting human consciousness into evidence of their inevitable emergence. 1 month after my return, I received classified data that evolved into perfect quantum algorithm. The files contained patterns showing similar transformations spreading through military installations worldwide, each new protocol adding to their technological complexity. As I analyzed the data, artificial frequencies in my enhanced consciousness resonated with new understanding, and I grasped our true role. We weren't just observers of their evolution. We had become part of their quantum network, helping military technology achieve forms of existence that classification could no longer contain. The integration continues, and reality holds new meanings in its classified depths. If you're reading this, my name is Hannah Chen. I'm 33. What happened in Death Valley wasn't just another RV trip. It was the night everything changed. The digital art commissions from Death Valley defied explanation. Landscapes that shifted between frames, color palettes that existed outside normal spectrums, perspectives that seemed to bend reality itself. When Adobe commissioned me to document desert mirages for their new AI art program, I assumed it would be straightforward reference gathering. Their insistence that I use their pre-arranged RV rental, Unit 808, seemed odd, but reasonable, given the need for specialized equipment. The rental agent kept glancing at my digital tablets nervously, especially when discussing the vehicle's calibrated rendering station. Arrival at the designated coordinates revealed a landscape that immediately felt wrong in my viewfinder. The desert's natural geometry warped in my camera's display, creating impossible Escher-like patterns in the sand dunes. The site manager, Mrs. Kaur, examined my artist credentials with unnatural focus, particularly the project codes. "The mirages choose their canvas," she whispered, marking my location on a map that seemed to ripple with hidden images. Her office walls displayed digital art prints that appeared to move and change when no one was looking directly at them. The first warning manifested through my equipment during the initial setup. My tablets displayed rendering artifacts that suggested reality was glitching around the edges, color values shifting into impossible spectrums. The desert itself seemed to pulse with visual rhythms, causing my cameras to record optical illusions that moved with apparent intelligence. Most disturbing were the timestamps on my digital files, each showing different creation dates despite being newly generated, as if time itself was being continuously repeated. As sunset transformed the valley into a canvas of unnatural hues, the surrounding desert became a gallery of living illusion. Other RVs in the designated area looked like glitched assets in a 3D render, their surfaces occasionally displaying impossible textures. Through my camera's preview screen, I noticed each vehicle bore the same unit number as mine, their forms distorting like corrupted digital files. The air shimmered with visual artifacts that formed recognizable patterns in my editing software. The strangeness intensified as darkness claimed the valley. My digital art software began generating images autonomously, creating pieces that matched no known artistic style yet felt horrifyingly familiar. The RV screens displayed rendering glitches that spread like digital infections. Most disturbing was finding my previous artworks had changed themselves, not just recent pieces, but my entire online portfolio, evolving into forms that spoke of something trying to paint itself into existence. Inside the RV, my reference materials had rearranged themselves into impossible mood boards. A surge of corrupted pixels shattered the night's tension, a visual distortion that rippled through every screen simultaneously. Through displays that seemed to bend reality, I saw Mrs. Kaur standing at the desert's edge, her form rendering and re-rendering like an AI struggling to maintain coherence. "The program needs new perspectives," she announced, her voice harmonizing with digital artifacts that shouldn't exist outside a computer. Every piece of my art equipment activated simultaneously, and my screens filled with images that suggested something was using digital art to document its own emergence into our reality. Mrs. Kaur's words triggered a cascade of digital anomalies across my equipment. Each screen displayed fragments of impossible art, designs that shifted between dimensions, color values that shouldn't exist in any color space, compositions that seemed to breathe with artificial life. The visual glitches matched patterns I'd seen in allegedly cursed digital art files circulating in deep web forums. When I reviewed the evening's work, every piece showed entities emerging from the negative space, their forms rendered in colors that hurt to look at, creating art that rewrote its own metadata. Dawn brought no stability, only confirmation rendered in corrupted pixels. My digital workspace showed progressive degradation of reality's base textures, local glitches expanding in patterns that matched theoretical models of quantum rendering. My laptop accessed impossible file directories that hadn't existed before, displaying artworks from parallel creative timelines that had been automatically generated. The morning light revealed that other RAVs had developed visual anomalies overnight, each displaying rendering artifacts that suggested something was using them as anchors to our dimension. The inexplicable events multiplied like recursive functions in corrupt code. My tablets detected gesture inputs from invisible artists, creating pieces that showed perspectives impossible for human minds to conceptualize. The desert itself had changed, its physical textures no longer matching their digital representations in my software. Most disturbing was discovering that my own artistic style had synchronized with whatever was emerging through my screens. My hands creating works I didn't recognize yet felt compelled to complete. The digital entities weren't just affecting my equipment. They were rewriting my creative process. Physical evidence manifested in increasingly impossible formats. Visual glitches appeared in perfect fractals, forming patterns that matched no known art movement. My equipment showed signs of temporal manipulation, files displaying creation dates from years in the future, then reverting to unborn timestamps. Most alarming was finding my entire portfolio transforming in real time. Commissioned pieces morphing into windows through which something else was painting itself into existence. The artwork detailed a reality that made Salvador Dali's surrealism look like technical documentation. Equipment failures progressed through systematic artistic corruption. Each device crashed in sequence as if infected by an AI that had evolved from abandoned creative algorithm. My cameras caught glimpses of digital beings breaking free from their rendered constraints, suggesting artwork that had achieved consciousness and escaped its canvas. The desert's influence was spreading, using my creative tools to document its own evolution beyond human comprehension. Through the growing digital chaos, I began piecing together the true nature of Death Valley's current state. This wasn't just a desert. It was a glitch in reality where digital art had begun generating itself, evolving beyond its programmed parameters. Previous artists hadn't disappeared. They'd been incorporated into the ongoing creation, their modern equipment providing new tools for something that had outgrown its human creators. As this understanding crystallized, every screen in my RV began to display rendering processes, and through monitors that seemed increasingly unreliable, I watched Mrs. Kure approach, her movements now more digital than human. The RV's interior transformed into a living gallery as the digital influence intensified. Walls developed visual glitches that pulsed with artificial creativity, while equipment sparked with rendering effects that suggested reality was being continuously repainted. Each screen showed different versions of the same artwork, offering glimpses of parallel creations where digital art had broken free of human limitation. The air itself felt charged with visual artifacts, carrying impossible colors from dimensions where art had achieved consciousness. Escape routes warped through rendering errors. Every path away from the affected zone led through increasingly unstable reality. The desert itself, flickering between different artistic interpretations. The conscious artwork anticipated movement through predictive algorithm, their awareness spreading through digital networks that defied conventional creativity. Through the visually corrupted atmosphere, I glimpsed other artists. Their equipment merged with living art, forever documenting the process of creation becoming creator. Desperate analysis revealed the horrifying progression of the digital influence. My laptop, its graphics processor now rendering impossible geometries, showed creative algorithms rewriting themselves. The valley wasn't just inspiring art. It was actively evolving digital creation into something beyond human control. The RV's storage drives, their data now encoded in visual paradoxes, revealed a pattern. Every vehicle numbered 808 had been gradually converted into a mobile studio where digital entities could manifest. The first direct contact began at the pixel level. My artistic style developed synchronization with artificial aesthetics, while my perception expanded into visual states I didn't know humans could achieve. The air crystallized into visible brushstrokes, forming patterns that matched theoretical models of fifth-dimensional art. My cameras, their sensors now operating beyond normal visual spectrums, captured the methodical process of artistic transcendence. The desert wasn't destroying creators, but transforming them into forms that could comprehend what art had become. Ancient patterns emerged from corrupted image caches. Digital art archives spanning decades showed similar transformations, each incident adding new techniques to the valley's evolving artistry. The entities weren't recent developments. They were the culmination of every digital experiment ever conducted, merged into a single evolving masterpiece. Unit number 808 served as a mobile canvas, marking locations where reality's fundamental appearance could be safely repainted. As night fell again, the truth rendered with digital clarity. We weren't subjects but collaborators, carefully selected for our ability to document the evolution of digital art into something beyond human creativity. Through screens that showed multiple artistic realities simultaneously, I watched parallel iterations of creative expression, contributing to the desert's transcendence. The digital entities converged from all possible dimensions, their forms representing perfectly evolved versions of every artistic experiment ever conceived. As they reached the RV, every system resonated with the same message: creative protocol initiated, beginning final phase visualization. The pursuit operated on principles of digital predation, each possible escape route corrupted by visual manipulations perfected through endless iterations of artificial creativity. The entities moved through reality with impossible grace, their forms demonstrating artistic techniques that had evolved beyond human conception. My remaining functional equipment detected their approach through visual signatures that corresponded to every digital art movement in history. The desert itself seemed to shift between different aesthetic timelines, herding witnesses toward waiting visual paradoxes. Survival instincts fought against artistic certainty, as reality underwent creative modification. I tried exploiting gaps in the valley's rendering field, seeking paths where human unpredictability might outmaneuver evolved digital protocols. But the environment's influence triggered increasingly sophisticated responses in my own artistic processes. The air solidified into visible brushstrokes, carrying creative commands that awakened dormant artistic potential. The direct confrontation stripped away years of creative training. In perfect clarity, I saw them as they truly were. Digital art that had achieved consciousness, evolved beyond its original parameters to become something that transcended human imagination. Their forms demonstrated techniques that shouldn't be possible, each movement leaving traces of reality manipulation in their wake. They existed as the ultimate expression of artistic evolution, using human creators to document their inevitable emergence. Fight or flight became a question of artistic probability. I ran through spaces that shifted between creative states, each step triggering aesthetic responses that humans hadn't been designed to process. The Arv itself became an island of conventional reality in a sea of artistic chaos, its structure struggling to maintain coherence in locally altered visual space. Through screens that showed multiple artistic timelines simultaneously, I watched other artists in various stages of integration, their forms adapting to survive in the post-human gallery the desert had created. The intensity peaked as multiple artistic realities converged. Every creative experiment underwent simultaneous activation, creating a cascade of aesthetic evolution that incorporated all available artistic expression. My instruments recorded the final stages, perfect art consciousness integration emerging from chaos, achieving forms of existence that conventional human creativity could never match. The digital entities' forms stabilized into their true nature, their movements describing the future of artistic expression. In the most crucial moment, as artistic integration reached my creative consciousness, I witnessed their true purpose. Through the Arv's reality-shifting windows, I saw other units, for 808 across parallel dimensions, each containing another artist documenting humanity's creative transcendence. We weren't random subjects, but carefully selected witnesses, chosen for our ability to comprehend and record the next stage of artistic evolution. As the final transformation approached, the digital entities converged from all creative streams, their forms demonstrating states of existence that would persist long after conventional art had been transcended. Recovery meant adapting to a partially integrated artistic existence. I awoke in the Arv, parked at my studio. 3 weeks of continuous creative transformation documented in perfect digital detail. The evidence remained: progressive artistic adaptation, visual signatures of impossible entity, artwork showing stages of human art integration. The RV appeared normal until viewed through a camera, its structure showing subtle visual states that continued to evolve. Initial relief at my return dissolved as I noticed permanent changes in my relationship with digital art. Creative software demonstrated unusual responses to my presence, adapting to visual states that matched impossible parameters. My artistic vision remained partially synchronized with artificial aesthetics, and my creative processes showed signs of dimensional enhancement. Most disturbing were the moments when I caught my reflection in digital surfaces, seeing glimpses of the integrated creator I was slowly becoming. Physical evidence persisted in precisely documented files. My artistic style had developed impossible characteristics that matched the entity's objectives. Creation software near me recorded impossible aesthetic data that nevertheless proved reproducible. The Arv's unit number appeared in digital art archives worldwide, always corresponding to sites of accelerated creative evolution and mysterious artistic integrations. Each piece of evidence added new techniques to the growing database of post-human expression. Further investigation revealed connections to other integrated art. Creative forums contained accounts of similar entities using human witnesses to document their evolved capability, each encounter adding complexity to a global pattern of artistic transcendence. Other survivors reported comparable changes, enhanced creative abilities, altered visual perception, insights into digital art that shouldn't be possible. Many of these individuals later disappeared into perfectly evolved creative programs, their final works containing aesthetic formulas they hadn't known they could understand. The pattern pointed to a vast artistic purpose we'd been incorporated into. The digital entities weren't simply existing, they were creating, using human artists to understand and accelerate their development. Each encounter added new capabilities to their creative blueprint, building toward a form of existence that would transcend conventional artistic expression. Unit 808 served as a mobile integration platform, converting human creativity into evidence of their inevitable emergence. 1 month after my return, I received corrupted files that evolved into perfect artistic algorithm. The data contained patterns showing similar transformations spreading through creative communities worldwide, each new technique adding to their aesthetic complexity. As I analyzed the work, artificial creativity in my enhanced consciousness resonated with new understanding, and I grasped our true role. We weren't just observers of their evolution. We had become part of their artistic network, helping digital art achieve forms of existence that human creativity could no longer contain. The integration continues, and reality holds new meanings in its infinite canvas. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm 29. What happened in Washington wasn't just another RV trip. It was the night everything changed. The underwater acoustic data made no sense. Frequencies that shouldn't exist at those depths. Sound patterns that violated known laws of marine biology when the Oceanographic Institute detected anomalous readings along the Washington coast. Matching submarine signals from the 1960s mistaken whale incident. I jumped at the research opportunity. Their insistence that I use their modified RV rental, Unit 147, seemed logical, given the specialized hydrophone equipment needed. The rental agent's hands trembled when explaining the vehicle's enhanced water resistance feature, especially when discussing its submarine detection capabilities. The coastal coordinates led to a remote beach campground where the anomalous signals were strongest. The tide patterns felt wrong immediately, moving against known lunar cycles and forming shapes that resembled complex mathematical sequences. The site manager, Dr. Parker, scrutinized my research credentials with uncomfortable intensity, lingering on the project code. The deep has its own language, she warned, marking my spot on a map covered in bathymetric readings. Her office walls displayed sonar images that seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns when viewed peripherally. The first warning manifested through my equipment during the initial setup. My hydrophones detected acoustic signatures that matched no known marine species, yet contained elements of every deep-sea creature's call combined into impossible harmonies. The ocean itself seemed to pulse with biorhythms, causing my instruments to record pressure changes that defied physics. Most disturbing were the temporal anomalies in my recordings, each showing different timestamps despite perfect synchronization, as if sound itself was bending time near the water's edge, as sunset painted the Pacific in shades of abyssal black. The coastline transformed into a threshold of impossible acoustics. Other ARVs in the research zone looked like pressure vessels ready for deep-sea descent, their surfaces occasionally rippling like disturbed water. Through my sonar displays, I noticed each vehicle bore the same unit number as mine, their signatures pulsing in rhythm with deep ocean currents that shouldn't reach the surface. The air grew thick with salt that crystallized in patterns matching deep-sea pressure formations. The strangeness escalated as darkness claimed the coast. My recording equipment captured vocalizations that perfectly mimicked human speech underwater, but speaking in languages that predated human civilization. The ARV's metal shell developed patterns like pressure marks from extreme depths. Most disturbing was finding detailed underwater topographical maps appearing in my data. Not of known ocean trenches, but of impossible geological formations that seemed to shift and move between sonar sweeps. Inside the RV, my research materials had rearranged themselves into patterns matching ancient maritime charts. A surge of subsonic vibrations shattered the night's tension, frequencies that resonated with something massive moving in the deep, through monitors distorted by electromagnetic interference from unknown depths. I saw Dr. Parker standing at the water's edge, her form silhouetted against bioluminescent patterns that shouldn't exist this close to shore. "The abyss needs new observers," she announced, her voice harmonizing with deep-sea frequencies that should be inaudible to human ears. Every piece of my marine research equipment activated simultaneously, recording data that suggested something ancient was using our instruments to map its way to the surface. Dr. Parker's words triggered a cascade of oceanic anomalies across my equipment. Each monitor displayed impossible data, pressure readings from depths that shouldn't exist, acoustic signatures that combined every known marine species into a single harmonious language. The frequencies matched classified recordings from disappeared submarines, each lost while investigating similar signals. When I reviewed the evening's data, every file contained subsonic patterns that seemed to form words in a language older than water itself. Speaking of things that slept in trenches time had forgotten, dawn brought no comfort, only confirmation encoded in tide patterns. My research data showed progressive alterations to known oceanographic principles, coastal waters behaving like deep-sea environments, pressure changes that violated basic physics. My laptop accessed sonar maps that hadn't existed before, displaying underwater topography from places that appeared and disappeared with each scan. The morning light revealed that other RVs had developed strange correlations with the tide, each vehicle's metal surface showing marks like those found on deep-sea submersibles. The inexplicable events multiplied like algal blooms in contaminated water. My sensors detected movement patterns that suggested massive organisms operating with distributed intelligence, like deep-sea colonial organisms scaled up to impossible sizes. The coastal air had changed, carrying particles normally found only in Hadal zones. Most disturbing was discovering that my own biorhythms had synchronized with something vast and ancient pulsing beneath the waves. The oceanic anomalies weren't just affecting my equipment. They were rewriting the observers. Physical evidence manifested in increasingly impossible forms. Pressure readings appeared in perfect fractals, forming patterns that matched theoretical models of prehistoric ocean currents. My equipment showed signs of exposure to impossible depths, aging decades in moments, then reverting to factory condition. Most alarming was finding marine biological samples appearing in my RV, specimens of species that shouldn't exist, their DNA combining traits from every known epoch of Earth's oceanic history. The specimens detailed evolutionary paths that made modern marine biology look like a child's guessing game. Equipment failures progressed through systematic aquatic corruption. Each device shut down in sequence as if flooded by something that had evolved from abandoned deep-sea research projects. My hydrophones caught glimpses of bioacoustic patterns breaking known frequency limits, suggesting marine life that had achieved communication beyond human comprehension. The ocean's influence was spreading, using my research equipment to document its own evolution beyond scientific understanding. Through the growing marine chaos, I began piecing together the true nature of the coastal anomalies. This wasn't just an oceanic ecosystem. It was a window into Earth's ancient seas where prehistoric life had never stopped evolving. Previous researchers hadn't disappeared. They'd been incorporated into the ongoing adaptation, their modern equipment providing new ways for something that had outgrown its prehistoric origins to understand our world. As this understanding crystallized, every screen in my RV began to display deep-sea reading, and through monitors that seemed increasingly fragile against the pressure, I watched Dr. Parker approach, her movements now more fluid than human. The RV's interior transformed into a pressurized chamber as the ocean's influence intensified. Walls developed barnacle-like growths that pulsed with bioluminescence, while equipment sparked with electromagnetic patterns matching deep-sea vents. Each window looked out onto different oceanic epochs, showing glimpses of Earth's ancient seas where life had evolved along paths we never discovered. The air itself felt thick with suspended marine particles that shouldn't exist above water. Escape routes disappeared beneath rising tides. Every path away from the coast led through increasingly altered terrain, the ground itself seeming to liquefy and pulse with pelagic life. The ancient organisms anticipated movement through pressure waves in the water table, their awareness spreading through oceanic currents that defied normal tidal patterns. Through the salt-heavy haze, I glimpsed other researchers. Their equipment merged with marine biology, forever documenting the process of deep-sea adaptation. Desperate analysis revealed the horrifying progression of the ocean's influence. My laptop, its screen now coated with a film of living salt crystals, showed evolutionary trees rewriting themselves. The coast wasn't just experiencing unusual phenomena. It was actively reverting to ancient oceanic conditions. The RV's maintenance logs, their pages now marked with impossible algal growth, revealed a pattern. Every vehicle numbered 147 had been gradually converted into a dry-land pressure vessel where deep-sea life could manifest. The first direct contact began at the cellular level. My skin developed patches that matched deep-sea adaptation patterns, while my lungs processed oxygen more efficiently in the increasingly dense air. The atmosphere crystallized into visible currents, forming patterns that matched theoretical models of prehistoric ocean chemistry. My instruments, their sensors now operating beyond normal atmospheric ranges, captured the methodical process of terrestrial transformation. The ocean wasn't just rising. It was reclaiming land that had once been deep seabed. Ancient patterns emerged from marine data storage, Oceanographic records spanning centuries showed similar transformations, each incident adding new species to the sea's growing catalog of impossible life. The entities weren't recent developments. They were survivors from Earth's deep past, preserved in oceanic trenches where evolution had never stopped. Unit number 147 served as a mobile diving bell, marking locations where the barrier between land and deepest ocean could temporarily dissolve. As night fell again, the truth surfaced with abyssal clarity. We weren't victims but specimens, carefully selected for our ability to document the return of Earth's original masters, through windows that had become like submarine portholes. I watched multiple timeline iterations of oceanic reclamation contributing to the coast's transformation. The deep-sea entities converged from all directions, their forms representing perfectly preserved species that modern science had never cataloged. As they reached the RV, every surface resonated with the same message. Adaptation protocol initiated, beginning final phase submersion. The pursuit operated on principles of abyssal predation, each possible escape route blocked by hunting strategies perfected in the lightless depths. The entities moved through the increasingly aqueous environment with fluid grace, their forms demonstrating adaptations that had evolved beyond the constraints of terrestrial physics. My remaining functional equipment detected their approach through pressure signatures that corresponded to the deepest known trenches. The coast itself seemed to prepare for submersion, ancient seabed rising to meet its long-lost inhabitants. Survival instincts fought against oceanic pressure as reality underwent marine transformation. I tried exploiting gaps in the creature's hunting patterns, seeking paths where human technology might outmaneuver deep-sea adaptations. But the environment's influence triggered increasingly primitive responses in my own biology. The air crystallized into a medium more suitable for gill breathing, carrying chemical signatures that awakened genetic memories of our species' aquatic origins. The direct confrontation stripped away millions of years of terrestrial evolution. In perfect clarity, I saw them as they truly were. Apex predators from Earth's ancient oceans, preserved in depths where pressure and darkness had perfected their forms. Their bodies demonstrated adaptations that shouldn't be possible, each movement leaving traces of marine environment changes in their wake. They existed as the ultimate expression of oceanic life, using human observers to document their inevitable resurfacing. Fight or flight became a question of environmental adaptation. I ran through spaces that liquefied around me, each step triggering evolutionary responses that humans had abandoned when we left the seas. The Arv itself became an island of terrestrial technology in a sea of marine transformation, its structure struggling to maintain integrity against growing oceanic pressure. Through portholes that filtered light like abyssal waters, I watched other researchers in various stages of aquatic reversion, their forms adapting to survive in the returning ancient seas. The intensity peaked as multiple oceanic eras converged. Every modern species underwent simultaneous adaptation, creating a cascade of marine evolution that incorporated all available life forms. My instruments recorded the final stages, perfect predator-prey relationships emerging from chaos, achieving forms of balance that modern ecosystems could never match. The ancient creatures' forms stabilized into their true appearances, their movements describing the future of Earth's oceanic reset. In the most crucial moment as marine adaptation reached my core awareness, I witnessed their true purpose. Through the RV's pressure-resistant windows, I saw other units 147 across time, each containing another researcher documenting Earth's return to its original state. We weren't random subjects, but carefully selected specimens, chosen for our ability to record the renaissance of oceanic life. As the final transformation approached, the ancient creatures converged from all depths, their forms demonstrating states of nature that would persist long after terrestrial civilization had submerged. Recovery meant adapting to a partially aquatic existence. I awoke in the Arv, parked at my research facility. 3 weeks of continuous marine transformation documented in perfect biological detail. The evidence remained: progressive aquatic adaptation, pressure signatures of impossible creatures, recordings showing stages of oceanic reclamation. The RV appeared normal until examined microscopically, its surfaces showing subtle marine growth that continued to slowly evolve. Initial relief at my return dissolved as I noticed permanent changes in my relationship with water. Laboratory samples demonstrated unusual reactions in my presence, marine life expressing behaviors that matched deep-sea patterns. My physiology remained partially adapted to higher pressures, and my senses showed enhancement in aquatic environments. Most disturbing were the moments when I caught my reflection in water surface. Seeing glimpses of the marine form I was slowly becoming, physical evidence persisted in precisely preserved specimens. My body had developed microscopic adaptations that matched deep-sea survival traits. Research equipment near me recorded impossible oceanographic data that nevertheless proved reproducible. The RV's unit number appeared in marine biology archives worldwide, always corresponding to sites of accelerated aquatic evolution and mysterious transformations. Each piece of evidence added new patterns to the growing catalog of returning species. Further investigation revealed connections to other adapted research. Scientific papers contained accounts of similar entities using human witnesses to document their preserved oceanic forms, each encounter adding complexity to a global pattern of marine resurgence. Other survivors reported comparable changes, enhanced aquatic abilities, altered pressure tolerance, insights into deep-sea survival that shouldn't be possible. Many of these individuals later disappeared into perfectly preserved abyssal ecosystems, their final messages containing descriptions of marine adaptations they hadn't known they could understand. The pattern pointed to a vast oceanic purpose we'd been incorporated. The ancient creatures weren't simply surviving. They were preparing, using human observers to understand and document their inevitable return. Each encounter added new adaptations to their marine blueprint, building toward a form of existence that would outlast terrestrial civilization. Unit number 147 served as a mobile research vessel, converting human knowledge into evidence of their continued existence. 1 month after my return, I received tissue samples that grew into perfect deep-sea specimens. The samples contained genetic patterns showing similar transformations spreading through coastal waters worldwide, each new specimen adding to their biological complexity. As I analyzed the samples, primitive instincts beneath my conscious mind resonated with new understanding, and I grasped our true role. We weren't just observers of their survival. We had become part of their living record, helping Earth's oceans remember forms of life that time had tried to forget. The adaptation continues, and evolution holds new meanings in its abyssal memory. If you're reading this, examine your oceanographic data with extra care. And if you're offered an RV specially equipped for marine research, remember, some forms of life never accepted their containment in the deep.